cold. Not the kind that makes you shiver. The kind that tells you you're about to die. Mira wasn't breathing. Not really. Not in any way that counted. Her body was. Shaky, shallow inhales, steam slipping from her lips into the midnight fog. But her soul? That part had already started to let go. She lay there, flat on her back, dirt in her mouth, blood in her thighs. The stars above her didn't blink. The moon didn't care. And the man who should have been holding her hand right now, the one who promised protection the moment he claimed her, he'd tossed her across the pack border like garbage. Just like that. Her fingers clawed weakly at the frozen earth. Pain carved through her belly in jagged waves. She was in labor. Alone. Hours too early. No healer. No shelter. No help. Just the weight of betrayal pressing down on her chest like a stone slab. You ever wonder how it feels to be discarded? Not ignored, not left out, thrown away. Because that's what this was. 3 months ago, she was Torin's mate, the Alpha's prize, the pretty little Omega he paraded through the Hollow Fang den like a trophy, until she got pregnant. Then came the doubt, the whispers, the accusations. It's not his pup. She must have cheated. She's only pretending to be loyal. And Torin? He didn't ask questions. He didn't defend her. He believed them. And now here she was, bleeding out in the woods, her back against a tree root, her lips cracked, her body shaking so bad her teeth rattled. Another contraction hit, harder than the last. She screamed, or maybe she just thought she did. Her throat was so raw. It didn't make much sound anymore, just a hollow rasp. "Please," she whispered to no one. "Don't let me die like this." The wind moved through the trees, slow and soft, like it didn't want to be involved. And why would it? Even the forest seemed to have given up on her. She couldn't even hold her own belly now. Her hands were numb. Her legs had stopped responding. Her wolf, usually a whisper in the back of her mind, was silent too, as if she'd turned her face away, as if even her soul had gone still. But Mira felt it. The pup. Still alive. Still kicking. Still trying. Gods, that hurt more than the labor. She wasn't afraid to die. Not anymore. But she was afraid to leave him alone. She'd never even held him yet. Then, snap. Not from her body. From the trees. A branch cracked. Soft footfalls. Heavy. Controlled. Not deer. Not rogue. Wolf. Her breath froze in her throat. Another step. Closer this time. Then silence. Then, "Who the hell left you out here like this?" A man's voice. Deep. Rough. Sharp at the edges. Mira couldn't lift her head. Couldn't see him. But she heard his steps get closer. Felt the earth shift under his weight. He stopped a foot away. Crouched. Exhaled. And she felt it then. Not magic. Not the bond. Not fate. Safety. His scent hit next. Pine. Smoke. Iron. Something old. Not Hollow Fang. Not familiar. This man wasn't from her world. And still, his voice didn't carry pity. No judgment. Just urgency. "You're in labor," he muttered. And bleeding out. She could barely nod. He didn't hesitate. "You're not dying here. Not on my land." And then he picked her up, arms beneath her back and knees, like she weighed nothing. She gasped from the pain, body folding in on itself. But he didn't stop. He moved fast, fluid, controlled. Mira couldn't fight him, couldn't flee, couldn't think. She just collapsed into his chest and let go. Later, she'd wonder about that moment, about what kind of man lifts a stranger out of the dirt and carries her toward firelight. No bond, no duty, no promise, just choice. She didn't know his name. She didn't even know if she was still alive. But she knew this much. That was the first time in months someone touched her without hurting her. And even as the black took her, even as her mind slipped away, she held one last thought. Maybe this time, I'll survive. Make sure to like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. The scent of blood was still on his hands. Riven crouched beside the fire, silent, still, jaw clenched as the healer worked. He didn't speak, didn't blink, barely breathed. His wolves stood outside the door, confused, tense, whispering among themselves. But none dared enter. Because the Alpha had brought her in himself, because she was an Omega, and because she was from Hollowfang. The healer, Thalia, moved quickly, fingers steady, voice soft. She'd delivered dozens of pups, but this was different. She's lost too much blood, she said, not looking up. Riven didn't move. She's early, and she's freezing. Still, nothing. Talia frowned. I can't do this alone. If she doesn't wake up... She will, he cut in, finally. His voice, rough, quiet, certain. Mira stirred, just a twitch, a shift under the furs. Her breath caught in her throat before it could rise. She didn't know where she was. She didn't recognize the warmth or the firelight or the weight of blankets on her chest, and she panicked. Her eyes flew open, strange ceiling, thick stone beams, fire crackling at the edge of her vision. She tried to sit up. Her body screamed. She whimpered. Riven was already there, not touching, just close. You're safe. 2 words, no emotion, just truth. Mira blinked. Her lips cracked when she tried to speak. Where? He didn't make her finish. You're in Ironclaw territory, Healer's Den. You crossed the border last night. She remembered now. The cold, the pain, the moment everything stopped. Her hand jerked toward her belly. She gasped, empty, flat. Terror slammed into her like a wave. My baby, where's my... A cry cut through the room, sharp, high, alive. Thalia stepped forward, swaddled bundle in her arms. Mira froze. Couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The healer handed her the pup gently, slowly, whispering something soft she didn't hear. Her arms locked around him on instinct. Tiny weight, tiny warmth. And then he moved. A flailing hand, a squirm. Mira's body broke before her mind caught up. She sobbed, deep, shaking, silent, the kind of cry that rips straight from the bones. Her baby, breathing, still here. The Alpha watched, quiet, distant, not cold, just unreadable. Mira's head fell forward. She kissed the top of her son's head like she might lose him again if she stopped. She didn't look up when she whispered, "Why did you help me?" Silence. Then, I saw a woman dying on my land, with a pup inside her. His tone didn't rise. It didn't soften either. Didn't matter what pack she was from. She blinked. Her voice shook. I'm Hollowfang. I know. They'll come for me. Maybe. You should have left me. He didn't answer right away. But when he did, it was low and brutal. I don't leave wolves in the dirt to die. That's not who we are. Talia finished checking the pup's vitals. Healthy, small, but loud. Strong lungs. It's a miracle either of them made it, she muttered, more to herself. Mira lay back, exhausted, arms still locked around her baby. The healer stepped out to give them space. The Alpha didn't. He stayed, silent, watching the flames. She hated that she felt safer with him in the room. It scared her more than being alone. He didn't ask for the baby's name, didn't ask who the father was, didn't ask why Hollowfang had discarded her like something cursed, and that, somehow, made her want to tell him. But she didn't. Riven finally moved as he stepped toward the door, slow, steady. But just before he left, he paused, spoke without looking back. "When you're strong enough to walk, we'll talk about what comes next." Then he was gone. Mira stared at the fire. The pup stirred in her arms. She looked down at him, at his face. He didn't cry now, just breathed, curled close like he already knew this world was cruel, and she was the only safe thing in it. "I don't know where we go next," she whispered. And she didn't. She had no plan. No pack, no future. Only this baby and a heartbeat still catching up with the idea that she was alive. Outside, snow began to fall, soft at first, then heavy. And in the trees beyond the border, something else moved. Watching, waiting, silent. Something that hadn't let go. Not yet. The scream ripped through the healer's den before dawn. Raw, animal, terrified. It jolted the wolves outside from sleep. A few ran. One shifted mid-step, instincts rising. Riven was already moving, fast, silent, shirtless, barefoot, his eyes glowing with that low burn that meant danger was close. But it wasn't a threat that triggered the sound. It was Mira. Inside the den, she was bent forward on the cot, fists gripping the furs like she was holding back a storm. Sweat poured down her temple. Her breathing was jagged, broken. The pup cradled in the healer's arms beside her, crying in response to her pain. "No," Mira rasped. "No, not again." Talia pressed a hand to her shoulder. "You're not bleeding. It's not a rupture. It's something else." "It's him," Mira hissed through her teeth. "Who?" "My mate. My former—" Another wave of pain cut her short. Her spine bowed. He's still in me. I can feel him." Riven stopped in the doorway. She looked up at him, her lips trembling, eyes wild and wide. "He's inside my blood. He's using the bond. I thought it was gone." "It's not," Riven said. The room fell still. Talia's hands froze mid-motion. The pup whimpered. Mira stared at him. "How do you know?" His jaw flexed. "Because I've seen it before." The pain hit again. Her body twisted like it was rejecting itself. But this wasn't labor. This was punishment. Old magic. Darker than most wolves ever touched. A mate bond unbroken. Used like a leash. Riven crossed the room. Knelt beside the cot. His hands hovered, not touching. His voice lowered. "He's pulling on it. From wherever he is. He can feel you. Sense your pain. Your fear." She gasped. "He knows I survived." Riven nodded once. "And now he knows about the child." The room spun. Mira's head dropped. The edges of her vision blurred. She didn't know if she was crying or sweating or both. She just knew it hurt. Not just physically, spiritually. Like she was being dragged backward into a life she'd barely escaped. Talia moved fast. She crushed herbs into a thick paste, mixed it with a steaming liquid, stirred it until it thickened and smoked. "Drink," she said. Mira blinked. "It won't break the bond," Talia added, "but it'll dull his reach. Give you back a little of your mind." Mira drank. It burned going down. Sharp. Bitter. Like it had claws. But slowly, the pressure eased. The scream inside her head dulled to a low, dull ache. She could breathe, barely. "Why is it still there?" she whispered, voice hoarse. "I thought when he left me. When he rejected me, it would shatter." "It should have," Talia said gently. "It didn't," Riven murmured. "Because he didn't fully let you go." "He said the words," Mira snapped. "But he didn't release you," Riven countered. "Not in magic, not in blood." There was a silence that sat too long after that. Talia wiped her hands and stood back. Riven didn't move. He just watched her. Not cold, Not soft, just constant. And Mira hated how steady that made her feel. The pup whimpered. She reached for him instinctively, hands still shaking. Riven stood. Rest. I'll have guards posted on the den. I don't need protection. You will. Their eyes met. I can't fight him, she said. You don't have to, he answered. But he was wrong. She knew it already. The bond would keep dragging her back. Until it broke. Or she did. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat beside the fire, legs tucked under her, the pup curled against her chest. The pain still throbbed behind her ribs, but it was quieter now. Contained. She stared into the flames, didn't blink for a long time. She knew what came next. There were only two ways out of a bond like this. Kill the alpha, or break the magic. And she wasn't strong enough to do either. Not yet. But there was something else. Something that refused to fade. The way the alpha of Ironclaw had looked at her. Not like property, not like shame, like she was still someone. The pup stirred. Mira leaned down, whispered his name for the first time. Ashen. It wasn't a name she'd planned, but it came out like a truth she'd always known. Ash, because she had burned and survived, and this child was all that remained. The flames in the hearth popped, and somewhere deep in the forest, something howled. Not just a wolf, not a rogue, a bond. Echoing, screaming, tearing at the edges of itself. Mira didn't flinch. She just held her son tighter and whispered, "You'll never own me again." But the magic didn't answer with silence. It answered with heat, a violent surge in her chest, and a promise from far away. He was coming. She woke to silence. Not the silence of death, not the kind that followed pain, but the kind that comes when nothing is expected of you. No orders, no footsteps, no breath at your door, waiting to drag you back into chains. Just stillness. Warm, soft, unfamiliar stillness. Mira sat up slowly. Blankets slipped from her shoulders. Her skin was still sore, her muscles tight but not trembling anymore. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like prey. She glanced down at the small bundle sleeping on her chest. Ashen. Still breathing, still here. Her heartbeat kicked once, hard in her ribs. She hadn't dreamed him. The room smelled like herbs and wood smoke. The fire had burned low, casting soft gold across the stone walls. A folded tunic lay neatly at the foot of the bed. Beside it, bread and broth on a wooden tray. She blinked. This couldn't be real. Mira moved slowly, carefully. Every motion still shaped by the old fear. Step too loud, breath too fast, voice too sharp, and someone might hit you. But no one came. She ate with shaking hands. Bread warm, broth seasoned. Not scraps, not punishment food, real food. And no one had touched her without asking. Thalia entered with a knock. Not a command, just a quiet, polite knock. Mira flinched anyway. She always did. "Good morning," the healer said gently. "How's your pain?" Mira didn't know how to answer that. Which pain? The body? Dull ache? Manageable? The soul? That part hadn't stopped bleeding in years. She didn't speak, just nodded. Thalia didn't push. Instead, she checked Ashen's vitals, ran a hand over Mira's wrist, asked permission every time she touched her, and when she was done, she smiled. "You're healing better than I expected." Mira didn't believe it, but the words still made her chest tighten. Later, she was guided outside, wrapped in a long cloak, baby snug against her chest in a sling, the sun low behind the trees, the air crisp but not cruel. She kept her eyes down, out of habit. But what she saw, children running, warriors laughing, Wolves in mid-shift, rolling in leaves. No collars. No shackles, no punishments. It felt like fiction. A small pup, barely old enough to speak, ran up to her. Bright eyes, muddy paws, a flower crown in hand. "I made this for the lady," she said, proud and breathless. Mira froze. She didn't reach out, but the child placed it gently on her head and grinned before running off. Mira stood there shaking, not from fear, not from pain, from something else, a kind of disbelief that felt almost like grief. Because this was what safety looked like. And it was almost unbearable. She turned back toward the healer's den, her steps slow, careful, like she might break the spell by walking wrong. Riven stood near the training pit, speaking with a beta. He glanced up. Just once, their eyes locked. He didn't smile, didn't nod, just looked. Saw her, not as a burden, not as a threat, just as a woman standing on her own feet. That night, she sat on the porch outside the cabin, Ashen asleep in the sling against her chest. The stars were bright, the air still. Her hand drifted down to his back, felt his little breaths, counted them like prayers. No one owned her here. No one claimed her body. No one touched her without asking. And still, she didn't feel free yet, because deep inside, in the cracks between her ribs, a memory still pulsed. His voice, Torin, still echoing, still waiting, still watching. And somewhere she could feel him feeling her. Not enough to hurt, just enough to remind her. He hadn't let go, not yet. She couldn't breathe again. Not from fear, not from memory. From him. The bond pulsed, hot, sharp, sudden. It hit her in the middle of the night like a claw hooked behind her ribs and yanked, hard. Mira doubled over, knees hitting the floor of the den before her scream even broke the air. Thalia rushed in first. Riven came next, shirtless, barefoot, eyes already glowing with fury. Mira was curled in on herself, arms shielding her stomach, mouth open in a silent cry. She wasn't bleeding. She wasn't broken. But something inside her was being pulled. Her wolf whimpered, confused, her body recoiled. Her soul tried to hold itself together. "Make it stop," she gasped, voice shredded. Talia's hands moved fast, checking vitals, casting runes, whispering to the old magic. Nothing worked. Riven dropped to one knee beside her, his presence grounding, massive, steady. But even his nearness didn't dull it this time. "What is it?" he asked low. Talia didn't look up. "The bond. It's flaring." "It's not supposed to flare," he growled. "She's still tethered to him." Mira's nails dug into her own thighs. "I thought I was free," she choked. "You were rejected," Talia said. "But he never severed it. What does that mean?" "It means," Talia said softly, "he's still holding the string. And when he tugs," Mira screamed again, body arching off the floor, "you feel it." It wasn't physical pain, not entirely. It was worse. It was emotional whiplash, like someone crawling through her memories, plucking every soft moment and twisting it, replaying the warmth of early touches with cold fingers, showing her what once was, and what never really meant anything. She felt him, where he was, what he was doing, the scent of another woman on his skin, the pleasure in it, the possessiveness. He was with someone else, and through the bond, he wanted her to feel it. Her heart cracked open again. But this time she didn't cry. She howled, not as a mother, not as an Omega, not as a broken girl, as a wolf, furious, cornered, shaking from rage. Riven grabbed her hand. Not gently, not soft. Solid. Real. Present. "Look at me." She did. Barely. Her vision blurred, but his face burned through it, unmoving, unshaken. "You're here, not there." "I can feel him," she whispered. "I hate that I still feel him. He's using the bond like a weapon." She nodded once, tears burning the edges of her eyes. "Then let's break it." Talia looked up, alarmed. "It's not that simple," she said. "This isn't a string you can cut with a knife. It's blood magic. Old magic. You need a ritual, and she needs to be strong enough to survive it." "I don't care," Mira hissed. "I'm not letting him drag me through his bed ever again." The fire in her voice surprised even her, but she meant it. She would rather die on that floor than feel him inside her again, wrapped in another woman, reaching into her soul like he still owned it. She didn't belong to him. Not anymore. Not ever again. Riven stood. "Get what you need," he told Talia. "We do the ritual." The healer hesitated. "She just gave birth, Riven. She's barely standing." "She's already surviving hell," he snapped. "This is the only way to pull her out." By dawn, the den was sealed. Ashen had been taken to the nursery under Thalia's apprentice's care. Runes were drawn across the walls in bloodroot and sage ash. Salt circles marked the floor. Candles flickered with unnatural light. Mira stood in the center of it, barefoot, heart racing, fists clenched. She was afraid. Of course she was. But fear didn't stop her now. This pain had to end. Talia handed her the final drink. A thick, pulsing brew. It smelled like rain on burned earth. "This will bring the bond to the surface," she said. "It's going to hurt. It's going to try to hold on." "Let it try," Mira said. "I'm done playing its game." Riven stood just outside the circle, eyes locked on her. Guarding, silent, no promises, no touches, just his presence. The one thing she hadn't known she needed until it was given without asking. She drank. The world tilted instantly. Fire raced through her veins. Her chest cracked open. The bond rose like a beast made of smoke, tangled around her spine, her heart, her head. Then the voice came, Torin. "You're mine. You'll always be mine." She saw him, not with her eyes, with her soul. Him, on his throne, smirking, another girl in his lap, his hand wrapped around her throat the way it used to wrap around Mira's. And still, he looked at her, through the bond, through the pain, through the fire. She screamed. The room trembled. The runes flared. Thalia chanted, voice sharp and fast. Riven stayed still, hand pressed to the wall, eyes black now with power. Mira dropped to her knees. The bond squeezed tighter. "You think you can run?" Torin hissed. "You think you can hide behind another alpha like a whore?" She shook, every nerve screaming, lungs begging. "You were nothing before me." Then Mira looked up, and she laughed. Once, sharp, bitter, and she said, without shaking, "I was always more than you." She reached inside herself, grabbed hold of the bond like a rope wrapped in barbed wire, and pulled. Hard. Pain lit through her chest like lightning, and then, snap. It didn't feel like release. It felt like death. Like something tearing loose from her soul with teeth. She collapsed. Riven caught her before her body hit the stone. He didn't speak, just held her there, breathing with her. Her fingers were bleeding, her chest was soaked in sweat. But the silence that followed, it was clean, empty, free. She wasn't healed yet, but she wasn't his anymore. Only, far beyond the border, in the place where the bond used to live, a void opened, and something dark started to crawl toward it. He was already waiting at the border. Before the scouts gave word, before the pack raised the alarm, before Mira even felt the shift in the wind. She knew. The instant the bond broke, the moment it snapped in her chest like bone on stone, Torin felt it too. And now he was here. Riven stood at the ridge with a line of warriors behind him. His shoulders were loose, relaxed. But his scent? Wrong. Electric. Charged with fury. He hadn't said much when the guards brought word that Hollowfang's Alpha had stepped past the outer ward line. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than any howl. Mira stood on the porch of the healer's den, cloak wrapped around her, heart thudding in her ears. Ashen slept in the sling pressed against her chest, his tiny breath warm on her collarbone. The bond was gone. But the echo of it hadn't stopped, not yet. She didn't feel pulled toward Torin anymore, but she felt him, angry, hollow, wounded in the way only power-hungry wolves ever feel wounded, because he hadn't expected it to break, because he thought she'd stay caged even when the door was open. She stepped off the porch, one foot, then another. No one stopped her. Not Talia. Not the warriors guarding the path. Not Riven, who turned when he sensed her approach but didn't reach for her. They all let her walk forward, because this wasn't their moment. It was hers. The clearing was open, snow thick in patches, the scent of frost in the trees, and on the far side, dressed in obsidian leathers, smirk carved into his face like a scar. Torin. He tilted his head when he saw her. No surprise, just calculation. "Still alive," he said, as if amused. "Impressive." Her grip tightened on the sling. Ashen shifted, but didn't wake. Torin's gaze dropped, locked on the baby, and something feral flickered in his eyes. He took a step forward. Riven's growl cut through the cold like a blade. "Another inch," he said flatly. "And I'll remove your legs at the knee." Torin smiled. "I'm not here for war." "Then why are you here?" Mira's voice. Steady, louder than she meant it to be. Torin looked at her fully now. His smirk softened, became something familiar, manipulative, intimate, poisoned with memory. "I came to collect what's mine." Every wolf tensed behind Riven, but Mira didn't move. She didn't shrink. She stepped forward, into the open, into the cold. She stood alone, and when she spoke, her voice didn't shake. "I'm not yours." Torin raised an eyebrow. "No?" he said lightly. "Didn't feel that way last night. Bond tore like a nerve. That kind of pain doesn't happen without meaning." "It wasn't pain," she said. He blinked. "It was freedom," she finished. The words hung in the cold. No one breathed, even the wind waited. Torin's smile broke. Just slightly. And Mira saw it then. Not a mate. Not an alpha. A man who had spent too long getting what he wanted and didn't know how to handle being denied. "You have no power here," she said. "Don't I? You're not bonded to me. You're not father to this child. You're not welcome in this territory." She stepped closer. "More than that, Torin." Her voice dropped, but it hit harder than any growl. "You don't scare me anymore." His eyes darkened. "You think this pack will protect you?" He spat. "They'll turn on you like all the rest. You're just an orphan Omega with a bastard pup." "Maybe," she said, "but they haven't touched me without asking. Not once. And that's more than you ever gave me." Torin's wolf surged behind his skin. His shoulders flexed, his hands curled, but he didn't shift. Not with 20 Ironclaw warriors staring him down. Not with Riven standing a breath away from ripping out his throat. Mira didn't wait for him to speak again. She turned her back on him. Completely. and walked away. That was the moment the pack understood. She hadn't been claimed by Ironclaw. She had claimed herself. Riven watched her pass, slow and unshaken. Ashen stirred in her arms. Mira glanced down at him, then up, toward the moon breaking through the clouds, and she said, not to anyone, not loud, but true, "I'm not running anymore!" Behind them, Torin snarled once, loud, frustrated, cornered, but he didn't step forward. He couldn't, not anymore. Riven turned to face him fully. "You cross this land again," he said, low and final, "and I won't be talking next time." Torin bared his teeth. "You think she'll stay here forever? You think she'll be loyal to you?" "She doesn't owe me anything," Riven said. "That's the difference between us." And that was it. Torin didn't retreat. He vanished. One blink, and he was gone into the tree line. But not gone from the story. No, because some wolves don't come to fight. They come to wait, to stalk, to rot the roots beneath you until everything falls in. And Mira had just told him she was no longer his. That was something men like Torin couldn't let go. Later that night, Riven found her standing at the edge of the healer's garden, hands buried in the soil, bare feet in the frost. She didn't turn when he approached, but she said, "I thought I'd feel better." He stopped beside her. "You don't?" "I feel shaken, hollow, like he ripped something out of me when he left." "Maybe he did." She looked at him finally. "Then why don't I feel broken?" Riven's eyes didn't leave hers. "Because broken things don't stand like that." The moon rose higher, and somewhere in the far trees, a sound carried on the wind. Not a howl, not a name, a child's cry. Except Ashen was asleep, right there in her arms. The air cracked before she hit the ground. Mira didn't scream. There was no time for it, only instinct. Only the rush of pain slicing up her spine, ripping through her gut, folding her in half before her knees buckled under her. She barely got her hands out in front of her, barely stopped her skull from cracking the stone. But the rest? It all collapsed. Blood. It was fast, warm, spreading across her thighs, down her legs, soaking into the hem of her tunic. She felt it before she saw it. Then she looked down, and panic slammed into her like a fist. "No, no, no." She tried to crawl, but her limbs didn't respond. Her body was in full revolt, muscles locking, breath stuttering, her wolf crying from deep inside, clawing at her insides. Then the contraction hit, harder than anything she remembered from Ashen's birth, worse than the bond flare. This wasn't labor, not normal labor. This was magic. Dark, familiar, cold-blooded magic. And it was him. Footsteps pounded behind her. Then a voice. Low, dangerous, barely human. "Mira." Riven. He slid to her side and caught her just before she went flat against the stone. "I've got you," he said, arms locking around her shoulders. "Stay with me. Just breathe." "I can't," she gasped. He's close." Riven's jaw clenched so tight she felt it through his chest. "Where?" "I don't know," she choked. "He's inside me again." "I feel him, like before, but different, closer, more possessive, hungry, intentional." Thalia rushed in next. "Clear a path to the den!" More wolves scrambled, a stretcher, cloth, warm towels. Mira was half lifted, half dragged through the hall. Every inch, another wave of pain. Every breath, tighter than the last. The world blurred. Voices echoed. Her heart beat in her throat. And under it all, that phantom hand again, tugging. They laid her on the table. Thalia barked orders. One apprentice boiled water. Another ground herbs. Riven didn't leave. He paced like a caged storm. He didn't growl, but the air around him pulsed like it wanted to explode. "She's early," Thalia snapped. "Too early," one of the assistants whispered. "No," Mira rasped, forcing herself upright. "It's not the baby, it's him." "He's doing this." Riven stepped closer. "Can he still reach you?" "I don't know," she gasped as another wave hit. "I thought the bond was broken. I felt it snap." "It was," Talia said. "But if he had any part of her magic tethered—" "Like a mark?" Riven cut in. Talia hesitated, then nodded. "Exactly like that." Mira's head dropped. Of course. Of course he marked her before he rejected her. Claimed her with blood. With dominance. With magic too old to trace. And now, it was reaching back. Trying to reclaim her through pain. Through her child. Thalia's voice softened. "You need to push." "I can't." "You have to. Whatever he's doing, it's forcing your body into labor. We can't stop it." Her whole body locked. Panic surged. She wasn't ready. The baby wasn't ready. Not again. Not like this. Not with him in her head. Riven came to her side. He didn't touch her. But she felt the heat of him. Felt the weight of his presence. Felt everything settle for just a breath. "You're not his," he said quietly. "You never were." She turned to him, sweat soaking her hairline, blood on her arms, her thighs, her chest, and whispered, "Stay." He nodded and didn't move. The pain came again, and this time, Mira pushed. Everything burned. Her body convulsed. Her throat went raw. She didn't hear the scream, but it tore through the room like a storm. She pushed again. Blood, tears, darkness. A sudden silence, then a cry. Sharp, small, alive. She collapsed. Her vision went black for a second. Her arms were too heavy to move, but she heard him. Her son, breathing. Thalia's voice was tight. "A boy. He's small, but strong." Mira couldn't answer. She was still trapped in the space between, still listening for that second heartbeat, the one that didn't belong to her baby, the one that didn't belong to her. She felt it, just once, a spike of something cold, from far away, like a hand slamming down on glass. And then, silence, dead silence, like a tether had finally snapped under its own weight. Mira blinked, her body still shook, but her mind, clear, still, empty of him. Riven took the child from Thalia's arms, passed him to Mira without a word, and when she looked down, she didn't feel cursed. She felt whole. She felt chosen, not by the bond, not by a title, not by fate, but by herself. She exhaled, closed her eyes, whispered into her newborn's ear, "I swear to you, he'll never touch us again." But far beyond the den walls, under black trees and full moon shadows, a second heartbeat had stopped, and in the space it left behind, something darker had started to breathe. He opened the door before she knocked, as if he'd already heard her heartbeat on the steps, as if he was expecting her. Mira stood there, barefoot, hair braided back, a soft blanket wrapped over her shoulder and across her chest, her newborn tucked close inside it. Ashen slept soundly. One hand clutched the edge of her tunic, fingers twitching in a dream. Riven said nothing. He only stepped aside. She walked in slowly. Not quiet like prey, not small like before, just calm, measured, present, like a woman learning what it felt like to move through space without apology. She hadn't meant to come. Not exactly. She'd made the bread because her hands needed something to do, because kneading helped slow her thoughts, because feeding someone else had always been an act of survival for her mother, and maybe that stayed in her bones. But when she was done, she hadn't wanted to eat it alone, so she brought it to him. "I made too much," she said softly, holding up the covered box. He didn't smile, didn't question it, just closed the door behind her and walked to the table. She followed. They didn't talk much. She sat across from him, Ashen still sleeping on her chest. Riven reviewed maps, territory lines, patrol zones, hunting routes. She ate in silence, slowly, fingers still trembling faintly from the aftermath of everything. He didn't rush her, didn't ask how she felt, didn't stare, but he saw her. That part scared her more than anything, the way he looked without looking, the way his presence didn't feel like pressure, the way his silence made room instead of stealing it. No one had ever been quiet like that before, not around her, not for her. After a while, he glanced up. "You seem stronger." She chewed her next bite slower, swallowed carefully. "I don't feel it," she admitted. "You don't have to yet." The warmth of that landed somewhere deep, somewhere her wolf curled around and held tight. She stood to leave, unsure what to say. He rose with her, followed her to the porch, still silent, still close. The baby shifted in her sling but didn't wake. She paused, one foot already on the step. "I don't know what this is," she said quietly. "Any of this." "You don't have to name it." She turned to face him fully. "I'm not ready for a bond. I'm not asking for one. I don't want to belong to anyone." His voice didn't flinch. "You don't." She blinked. No answer rose in her throat. No panic. No resistance. Just a stillness she didn't know how to trust yet. Her hand brushed his. A single touch. Fingers barely grazing the back of his. No sparks, no magic, just warmth, breath, skin on skin. Her voice cracked when she whispered, "I don't need saving." He nodded. "I know." And that should have been the end of it. But something flickered inside her, deep and stubborn. The need to know he meant it. The need to know this wasn't another cage dressed up like kindness. So she asked, softly, "Then why are you still here?" His answer came without pause. "Because I want to be." She didn't speak after that. Didn't need to. She just looked at him one last time, then walked away into the night. The baby's breath steady against her chest, her own heart quiet. But her thoughts? Still chasing something she wasn't ready to name. And behind her, long after the door closed, Riven stayed on the porch, still, watching the stars like he might find her answers there too. The messenger didn't knock. He slammed into the gate before dawn, bleeding, breathless, shaking. Riven caught him by the collar as he collapsed. The warrior rasped one sentence, then fell unconscious. And just like that, the storm Mira had spent her whole life outrunning was over. Silver Ridge has fallen. She was already awake. She felt it hours before the knock, the shift in the wind, the silence behind the trees, that strange, unfamiliar absence. Like a weight that had always been there was suddenly gone. Mira didn't cry. Didn't speak. Just stood still in the soft dark of her room, her newborn son pressed warm and safe against her chest. Riven stepped inside, voice low. "He's dead." Her eyes didn't leave the horizon. She whispered one word. "Good." She walked to the ridge just after sunrise. Alone. No guards, no warriors, no ceremony. Fog rolled through the trees like smoke. Ash rode the wind like snowfall. Silver Ridge was a ruin of its own making now. A graveyard for bloodlines that fed on obedience. A ghost town of fear. and pain, and the sound of girls like her begging not to be forgotten. She stood at the edge of it all, one last time, looked at the land that broke her, that birthed her grief, that carved every scar she wore now with pride. She didn't spit, she didn't scream, she only whispered, "You don't own me anymore." Then she turned back and walked into the future. The Blackstone pack gathered that night. No horns, no howling rituals, no declarations, just fire, light, warm food, laughter that didn't feel cruel, and eyes, dozens of them, that saw her not as broken, but as reborn. She didn't take the center, didn't raise her voice, didn't wear the crown they offered. Mira only stepped forward, the baby in her arms, and held him into the silver moonlight. "I was never made to rule over wolves," she said, voice steady, clear. "But I was made to protect one." No one bowed because they were told. They bowed because they chose to, because they knew. They felt it in their bones. The way her pain had shaped something sacred. The way her silence had carried a storm. The way survival wasn't her end, but her beginning. Later, Mira sat alone beside the healer's fire, Ashen asleep beside her, Riven on the steps nearby, silent as ever. She watched the sparks rise into the dark like stars trying to come back to life. "I don't know who I am outside of surviving him," she admitted. "You don't have to yet," Riven said. "I want to." He nodded. "Then take your time. There's no deadline on becoming." She didn't reply, but a breath left her body that she hadn't realized she'd been holding for years. "I want to name him now," she whispered. Riven turned, waiting, not leading, just letting her speak. "Lior," she said. The word was soft, carried like a promise. "It means light," in the old tongue. Riven repeated it, voice quieter than the wind. "Lior." Mira nodded once. "It's what I didn't have," she said, "and what he always will." The baby stirred. Mira stroked his back gently. No fear in her fingers now. No shame. No silence. Just certainty. Behind her, the pack began to sing. Not a war cry. Not a prayer. Just a soft, wordless hum that echoed under the stars and made the trees hold their breath. And far away, deep in the ashes of the forest that used to cage her, the last of the old magic flickered out. A bond dissolved. A bloodline ended, and a new one began. Because she was no longer hunted, she was home, and this time, no one could take her light. Not again, not ever.